We're going to be starting a new sermon series. It's going to be a five-part series. We're going to be going through the book of Ecclesiastes, and it's the title is the search for meaning, and that's what we're going to be going through. The title to this message is actually "Wisdom Brings Depression." So, let me tell you a little bit about my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather was a soldier in World War II. He and his eight older brothers all went off to fight in World War II. They went. My great-grandfather particularly went over to Japan to fight, and he was I guess he was a natural leader, because in his time in the army, he rose to the rank of master sergeant by the time that he ended his military career, and he was also a very poetic man. This was another attribute he had. He was a poetic man. I've read some of his poetry that my grandma sent me. It was beautiful to read some of the stuff that he had written, and some of it while he was in the service, while he was stationed overseas. He would write poetry, and he would also send some to my great-grandmother in their letters to one another. Lastly, he was also our family's first preacher. After his time in the military, and once he got out, he decided to pursue a Bible degree. He was kind of wild in his youth. I think I've told some of you the story about how wild he was. He actually stabbed one of his brothers in the hand, pinning it to the floor one time. He was so crazy. But after all of this rambling, all of this wildness of his youth, he came to faith, and he decided to pursue a Bible degree and began what would be a long and fruitful ministry until the day that he died. I never met my great-grandfather. He actually died the month before I was born, but I almost feel like I know him from the many stories that I've heard about him, and the box of sermons that I've read through of his over and over and over. I have a box of sermons over the Gospel of John, and I just love reading through them because I feel like I can hear my great-grandpa talking to me. I've also been told that me and him are very similar. Our personalities are very similar, and our mannerisms are also very similar. This often comes up at the dinner table whenever I'm eating, because I remind them of the way he ate. I am very slow, as some of you may have noticed. I'm usually the last one eating at the table. And when other people are cleaning up, I still have food on my plate. I'm sure you've noticed. And that reminds them of my grandpa. I'm with how much my great-grandpa and me are alike, there are many times where I wish that he were here to give me some life advice. I really wish that he could be here and kind of direct my path in some ways. I feel like he would understand where I'm coming from and understand some of my struggles because of his life experience and also the ways that we're similar. I have this made-up scenario in my head that I've thought of before about if I were to meet him, if I were to talk to him, where we're sitting on the back porch of our house, and we're sipping sweet tea, sitting in our chairs, and we're looking across the beautiful scenery of the South with oak trees, and hearing the sound of nature in the background, and him just telling me stories, me asking questions, and him just imparting good wisdom to me. And why do I want to have this encounter with my great-grandfather is the question I have to ask myself. Do I think that he has the key to crack life's code? Do I think that his words of wisdom would in some way make my path clearer in life? And when I think about these questions that I ask myself, sadly I come to the conclusion that his words would still be insufficient. His wisdom that he would share with me would still come short. And but I know the man who wrote the book of Ecclesiastes dealt with this same issue. He writes about this same issue. The whole book deals with the search for meaning in life and finding a sense of purpose. It's Solomon's own personal reasoning and struggling through life and telling us as the reader what he struggled with to find meaning, to find purpose, and how he ultimately found it. Solomon was the writer of Ecclesiastes, who at this point he was preaching these words. He had been king over Israel for some time now. He was up in age when he was speaking these words. This scene is also most likely to be pictured on the steps of a temple, the front steps of a temple, kind of like me and my grandpa on the back porch, where he is teaching the nation of Israel in wisdom and teaching them through what he has learned through life, through some trial and error that he has experienced himself. He will also explain in our text that he committed himself to lifelong learning and has experienced many things in his time on earth, searching for meaning and searching for purpose. So in our particular text, if you haven't guessed it, we're going to talk about what Solomon has to say about finding meaning in life through earthly wisdom. The text is split into two sections, and both of these are attempts of Solomon to explore the meaning of life. And Solomon gives us conclusions in both of these instances, in both of these quests. So if you'll turn with me to Ecclesiastes 1, starting at verse 12, I'll read our text for us. Ecclesiastes 1, starting at verse 12. If you're there, I'll start reading. It says, I, the teacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. I applied my mind to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under the heavens. What a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. I've seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. What is crooked cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. I said to myself, look, I have increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly. But I learned that this too is a chasing after the wind. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. In Solomon's first quest, he's exploring all of the wisdom of the world. He's applying himself to the study of anything and everything he can in order to gain knowledge and wisdom. In high school English was the first time that I was first introduced to the term Renaissance man. The term Renaissance man really captivated me. I was not really into school, didn't really pay attention very much, if I'm being honest. I kind of just stumbled my way through and did what I had to do to get through. Anyway, so if you ask me all of the details about this period, it came from the Renaissance period, obviously, and so on and so forth. But the term, what I'm getting at, the term has to do with a person who kind of was good in multiple areas of life. They, like, for instance, they would be good at art, sports, everything. They would have their they would dabble in a little bit of everything. The best example I can think of a person who would exemplify what a Renaissance man is Theodore Roosevelt. If you know much about Theodore Roosevelt, you would quickly say, oh yeah, that guy right there is a Renaissance man. He was good at so many things. He accomplished more in his short 60 years on earth than most of us would hope to accomplish in 2 centuries if we were given that. He, in his short time on earth, was a soldier in the military who received the Medal of Honor. He was president. He was also an author. He was a graduate from Harvard who published 33 books in his lifetime, and by people that knew him, he was known to read at least 1 book a day, and if he was feeling extra spicy, he'd read 3. He really accomplished a lot. He is the reason for most of America's national parks and has done more for conservation than any other president in history. He also, more on a funnier note, he was also known to compete in boxing and wrestling in the White House. He would box and wrestle some of his aides and some of his employees at the White House. Those were just some of his little hobbies that he enjoyed. But it seems that Roosevelt really explored much of what life had to offer, and he really esteemed knowledge and learning very high. Solomon, same thing. He placed a high value on knowledge and devoted his life to obtaining as much of it as he could. If you were to look at the book of 1 Kings, you would read a story about Solomon's life where God tells Solomon to ask for something and he would give it to him. And what did Solomon ask for? He didn't ask for more money. He didn't ask for more power. He asked for wisdom. And God granted his request. He gave him wisdom. He was more wise than any ruler that came before him. But even with all that wisdom, if you recall, Solomon found out wisdom by itself was not fulfilling. He states that he found it all to be meaningless. What are some things in our lives? What are some things in your life that you try to find meaning in? Do you ever read books to find meaning? Is this what we do to find purpose? Do we do this to puff ourselves up? I feel like I am guilty of this at times. I've found myself putting my worth, my value in my knowledge that I attain. That's me. That's something that I have struggled with before. I'm always the harshest critic of myself as well. I feel like I make up what other people are thinking of me based on what I achieve and what I know. I feel like I am lacking in knowledge or that I'm inadequate in a subject, that my worth is affected as a person. At times I can even catch myself working hard at being, for instance, a better theologian, a better apologist, a better welder, a better tradesman, because I feel that at times either my success or my failure in that field defines me. I don't know if that's something you all struggle with. Maybe you want to use the wisdom that you've gained in life to fix something in society that you think needs fixing. Maybe it's in society, or maybe it's in your own life. It may be something such as in the church unity. You see that, I've gained some knowledge, I've read some books. I may have read some books on organizational leadership, or some book on unity, and it's my job. I feel a burden to go and fix that problem. Maybe it is a moral failing. in your life, or maybe even in someone else's life that you feel like you need to fix. Maybe it is the problems in our government. You feel like you've amassed some wisdom over time. You have read some books. You have gained all of this knowledge over time. Maybe you can go and fix that. If you saw the debate the other day, there's a lot of fixing that needs going on there. I don't know all the details, but there's some fixing, I promise. And there's so many things in society that obviously are broken. There's no debating that. There are things that are broken, that are not whole. And Solomon, and you say, okay, I feel like those need to be fixed. I feel like I need to fix that. And Solomon says, basically, good luck doing that on your own. Good luck doing that with your own wisdom, your own knowledge. He said, what is crooked cannot be straightened. And using another verse from later on in Ecclesiastes, it hints that maybe God allows some of these things to be crooked for a reason. Maybe he wanted them crooked for his ultimate purpose, for his ultimate end. I remember one time when I was working at Sky Ranch Christian Camp, there's some guys that I worked with who were terrible drivers. They could not drive. I remember getting calls on the radio that somebody had run the lawnmower into the ditch again, and you need to come and pull them out. Bring the tractor. You need to come and pull them out. And can you go fix it? Can you pull it out? And then I remember later on, I would get another call that this same person that had run the lawnmower into the ditch, he'd done it again. Can you come pull them out? Yeah, come pull them out. This happened maybe 2-3 dozen times throughout the summer. Get stuck in the ditch, and I can even remember the guy was driving a truck one time down the road, and I guess he zoned out and he lost control of the truck and he ran it into the ditch. And I was just like, my goodness, how many times are we daydreaming? Are we not getting enough sleep? What's going on here? Keep having to pull you guys out of the ditch. Sometimes we're even running over fences. And I remember all of this came down to the worst one. We had just bought a brand new RTV off-road vehicle for the maintenance team. It was kind of like your side-by-side. It could go anywhere, had four-wheel drive, real nice, made by Kubota. And one of our guys took out this brand new vehicle, usually reserved for our maintenance director to drive because it was real nice. And I remember getting the call on the radio. Dan ran the RTV into a tree and bent the bumper up real good. Can you see if you can fix this thing? Can you see if you can straighten this thing out? And I was like, oh goodness, let's see what we got to work with here. I remember them pulling this vehicle up into the maintenance shop, and it was so bent that it was twisted around the side of the vehicle, and it was actually touching on the fender well, the bumper was. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I did as best as I could as a welder, metal worker. I got the heating torch and I softened up the metal red hot, and I got this big old mallet and I went to beating on it, and I hit it until my hands were numb, and I think I'd maybe moved it an inch. And finally I got my redneck juices flowing up there in the old cranium, and I thought of the best thing I could think of was to get a chain and to attach one end to a tree and to attach the other end to the bumper and just get as much slack as I could and just ram it in reverse and pull this bumper out. And I did that about 5 times, and I got it about as straight as I could. And it still wasn't perfect, but it was as good as it was going to get. Our wisdom as humans, our efforts, all of our best efforts as humans will still not be sufficient to fix all of the brokenness in society. It just won't. And yeah, that's kind of depressing when you think about it. And Solomon failed at his first quest to find meaning through wisdom. He failed at his first quest to find meaning, but he regrouped. And he did some soul searching, and he said, I've gone at this thing the wrong way. Maybe let's see if I can use my wisdom in this second quest to find meaning through right and wrong. Let's find what's right, and let's find what's wrong, and let's find meaning through that. Maybe that'll be fulfilling. So this past summer, I went to a get-together at a friend's house, and he had a little swim hangout, and we were hanging out, and I know what you're thinking. You know, you're a sinner for not social distancing. You were hanging out with multiple people, swimming in the pool. You know, I was, well, get over it. You know, I didn't get COVID, but anyway, we did what all 20-year-olds do on a Saturday night, swimming in a pool. We talked about theology until 3 a.m. They know I'm a Bible college student, and a lot of my friends back home, they're not believers, or they're skeptics. And we had a long discussion about morality and right and wrong, and what makes you right and what makes me wrong. And it went on and on and on, as you can tell. And at the end of the discussion, really what you get out of it, the only conclusion I got was everybody has a different idea of what is right and what is wrong, and we're just basing it off of different things. And so how in this world did Solomon find out what is right and what is wrong? I guess maybe with his superior wisdom given to him by God, he found out what was objectively right and wrong. Well, not only did he find out what was wrong, because he searched out all the folly and everything as well. He found out what was wrong. But he lived out those wrong things that he found. If you were to refer back to 1 Kings again, Solomon had many wives. And along with having those many wives, he also adopted the religious practices of many of them. He ended up serving their gods. He worshipped their idols that they had. And so now wait a minute, this doesn't add up to me. He's trying to find truth. He's trying to find the subjective truth, yet he's worshiping many gods, following many different ideologies. This sounds very pluralistic to me. This sounds very contradictory in nature to me. Didn't Solomon have his own God that he worshipped? Wouldn't all of these beliefs and practices be at odds with one another? So, do any of us do this? Do any of us, is this a trap that we fall into? Do we actually become pluralistic on accident without even realizing it? I thought about this kind of in studying through this, and I feel that at times when trying to find meaning, when trying to fill that void that Solomon is talking about, that emptiness, without realizing it, at times we allow things in that we let define our meaning. We let fill that void because it feels good, because it makes us, we read that book and we have that knowledge. We feel fulfilled. We think, oh man, I am so intelligent. I am so wise, and yet it all breaks down. It is insufficient. And one of my skeptic friends at the pool would be quick to help you realize and point out that in your discussion about right and wrong, they would point out the contradictions in your life really quick. So, do you see the slippery slope that chasing after meaning with earthly wisdom brings? It quickly all comes crumbling down, and you probably don't feel much better about life after listening to this sermon than when you first came in, if we're being honest. And I think that's what Solomon was getting at. This wisdom, this human wisdom, is not sufficient in any way. We need something more concrete. We need something real. In Proverbs 2, verse 6, it says, "For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth comes knowledge and understanding." Somewhere along the way in Solomon's search for meaning, especially through wisdom, he very much esteemed wisdom. He realized that all true wisdom comes from God. The wisdom of humans is not wise at all. And he is the one, God is the one that brings meaning. So in all of our search for meaning, in all of our search for purpose and finding true wisdom, I urge all of us to seek God, who gives true meaning and who gives true wisdom to all of us, and he will give it to us, and that will bring true meaning and true purpose to life. Let me pray for us today. God, I pray that you be with us going throughout this series and reading about and searching your word to find what you have to say about our meaning, what you have to say about our purpose, and that we can find out what the frauds are in our lives, or the things that are prone to creep in that try to define our meaning, try to give us a false sense of purpose. I pray that you would be with us in our study and in our pondering of your word, and that you would make it real to us, that going through Solomon's words, through his own struggling with finding meaning and finding purpose, that we would see that all of this draws us to you, God. We see how insufficient all of our earthly wisdom is, and that it would ultimately make us run back to you, God. I pray that you be with us throughout this week and encourage us and sustain us. In your name I pray, amen.